This is the perfect time, the perfect week, to thank Ukraine from saving the world from World War III, for now. And that's because this Tuesday marks 3 months to the day that Russian President Vladimir Putin made the mistake that destroyed Russia as a superpower. 3 months to the day that Putin ordered 2/3 of the Russian army to invade Ukraine and replace its government, something he thought would take, 3-4 days. Instead, for 3 months now, his mighty army has been smashed, torn apart by the Ukrainian army, humiliated, outthought and outfought. Britain's defence ministry, in fact, estimates that a quarter of the Russian army in Ukraine has now been made inoperative. And that includes many of Russia's elite forces and best equipment. Get this, Russia's lost nearly 700 tanks alone. And let me put that in context. That is 3 times more tanks than are in the whole German army. And Russia's reinforcements, they're going to be second-rate, including badly trained recruits, second-hand weapons. Western sanctions, of course, including on parts that can be used by the military, now make it much harder for Russia to replace a lot of that lost equipment. While Ukraine, meanwhile, keeps getting new equipment sent in from around the world, like this modern rocket launcher that's come in from the Czech Republic. But of course, this war is not yet over, and it's time to remind us why the West cannot take its foot off Russia's throat, cannot give up on Ukraine now. And I say that because one thing does worry me, the media is getting bored with Ukraine. You don't hear so much about it anymore. And I guess that's Putin's big and only hope right now, that the West turns away and, well, he can keep going. Will we keep going? This is our big danger, because this war is in fact much more than a battle for Ukraine. It is the first battle in what could have been, what might still be, I don't know, but what could have been World War III. But if Russia's destroyed, that world war will have to wait. Now, the Russian invasion started a couple of weeks after Vladimir Putin made a deal with the dictator of Communist China to announce a new world order. The world dominated by America was over, they boasted, and now China and Russia, they had a friendship that was without limits. That was the phrase, without limits. And part of that was China backing Russia over Ukraine and Russia backing China's claim over Taiwan, an independent democratic nation that China insists it actually owns and it wants back. China's president has said to his army, prepare for war. And the fear in the West back then was this. You've got America under Joe Biden. It's looking weak. It was on the run from Afghanistan. It seems scared of fighting. Meanwhile, its European allies in NATO, the defence alliance, also looked weak and disunited. And this was the moment, perhaps, that Russia could invade Ukraine and China, meanwhile, invade Taiwan. And there was no way, of course, that the US could defend both, fight on 2 fronts against 2 huge powers like that, or even confront either. And if America did try to stop Russia or stop China, God help us all. Never did nuclear war look so close as it did 3 months ago. In fact, last month, Vladimir Putin was still threatening a nuclear attack on any country that helped Ukraine fight Russia.
We have all the tools for this, things no one else can boast of having now. And we will not boast, we will use them if necessary. And I want everyone to know that.
3 months on, what have we seen? What we've seen is World War III now looking less likely, not more. Even a nuclear attack looks less likely, even if retired Admiral Mike Mullins, the former US head of the Joint Chiefs, was still warning last week that a desperate Vladimir Putin, caught in a trap, no way out, was capable of anything with his nuclear warheads.
But they are a part of Putin's arsenal. He's pretty well cornered and boxed in, so we certainly have to consider it's a possible action he can take.
Admiral Mullins is right to warn. But here is what I think makes us safer and why we should now bless the Ukrainians, but also keep arming them. And as I explain why, bear this thought in mind, this question. What do you think China's dictator Xi Jinping is now thinking, watching this disaster as the West chews the army of his best friends to bits in the Ukraine? The war in Ukraine is still a long way from over. The Russians have given up trying to capture the whole country. Sure, they've retreated from northern Ukraine. They've been pushed out of Kharkiv, that city in the northeast, but they're still occupying territory on the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine. That's where they're concentrating now. They've taken more than what they stole in 2014, which were the parts in purple. They now occupy more of Ukraine than that. And they're still inching forward bit by bit, although very little and at a terrible cost. And that's why the Americans right now aren't really that worried. While Russia keeps trying to attack, throws even more forces in, more equipment in, well, its army is suffering losses that are going to eventually break it. And that's exactly what the US Defense Secretary sees as the West's big chance here, to smash Russia for a generation or more.
We want to see Russia weakened to the degree that it can't do the kinds of things that it has done in invading Ukraine.
Now, Russia's military losses are one thing, then perhaps even worse for its long-term future, the economic losses. The sanctions imposed by a suddenly united West, they are destroying the Russian economy, and in ways that we're not fully going to see for a year or two. Russia is, in fact, being broken. And more Russians are now turning on Putin, even though protests are banned, dissent against the government is heavily punished, newspapers, media, very much censored. Yet, you still see a crowd in a recent St. Petersburg concert chanting F. I'm sorry I can't use the whole word. Well, I'm not sorry I can't use the whole word. If you speak Russian, you're going to hear it. F the war. And what must worry Putin even more is that suddenly he's getting mysterious fires and explosions breaking out in Russia, and not just in oil terminals, but also last Saturday at Russia's Central Aerohydrodynamic Institute, very sensitive place. And before that, its top secret Central Research Institute for the Aerospace Defence Forces, where they do work on ballistic missiles. It raises real questions. Seems like some sabotage is going on. And while Putin is getting weaker, his rivals in Europe are getting stronger. NATO in particular is getting stronger. Even Sweden and Finland on the edge of Russia say they now want to stop being neutral. They've been neutral for decades. They want to now join NATO as well because they don't trust Putin. And Germany is finally increasing its spending on its army. It also doesn't trust Putin. And so you're getting Russia being beaten to pieces, and you get its enemies or its rivals getting stronger. Look at China. In the meantime, China, it's had a shock. I mean, it's sitting there thinking, what happened to Russia, our big ally that we signed this big defense alliance with 3.5 months ago? What happened to our friendship without limits? And it's not that China hasn't taken what we feared might be the next step. That's not the only sign of this. While the world's distracted, let's go and invade Taiwan. Force the West to fight on two fronts. It's even now refusing to send weapons to Russia, to send military parts, as far as we know. And the US, in fact, warned it. You do that and sanctions are coming your way. China seems to have listened. And why? Well, no one can tell for sure. Maybe China is itself distracted by the COVID pandemic. It's locked down dozens of its cities, including its biggest, Shanghai, and its own economy is now getting hammered as well. It sure can't risk the kind of economic sanctions that the West is using to try to destroy Russia. Now, looking at Ukraine, China's seen Russia, its big ally, is actually weak and it's crippled. It sees the US and Europe much stronger and united than it thought. It's seen the US urge Taiwan to learn from Ukraine how to beat a bigger army with cleverer weapons that the West will be happy to provide. Another reason, of course, that World War III is getting more remote is that China must now wonder. Armies of autocrats like Vladimir Putin, they don't often fight well. No one dares tell the boss bad news for a start. People down the chain don't like to take risks. And then there's the corruptions. I mean, Russia, generals have been stealing money meant for army equipment. And China's dictator must wonder, wait a minute, in our authoritarian system, is exactly the same thing true of China's army? So China hasn't invaded Taiwan, and I bet those plans are now on ice. War can wait. And I'm sure that Putin has got the message from China. By the way, guys, you start a nuclear attack, you're on your own. Don't count on us to come and help you. In fact, some of Putin's most aggressive media pundits are now changing their tune. I'll show you a guy who used to be on TV, almost night after night, claiming Ukraine was led by Nazis, should be destroyed, blah, blah, blah. Now he's on TV saying Russia is going to take whatever tiny thing it can pretend is a victory.
Цели будут отформатированы ровно под то, подо что будут возможности. Вот что получится, так сказать, то и будет потом объявлено целями.
So, bottom line, World War III has been cancelled for now. And for that, we have Ukraine to thank. The heroes of Ukraine. Long live Ukraine.